The silence after the war was over. At least, that's what the loudspeakers kept saying. Through the cracked visor of his battered helmet, Elias Rourke stared at the alien banners fluttering in the windless sky. The enemy's colors, green and black, hung from every wall of the shattered city, as if the wind itself had surrendered. Victory has been declared. The translation drones announced in 27 languages. Lay down arms. Accept the peace. But for Elias, a mechanic-turned-soldier from Earth's scattered colonial fleets, there was no peace. He was crouched in the shadow of a toppled monument, clutching a plasma rifle that hummed faintly against his gloves. His comms were dead. His squad was gone. The streets smelled of scorched metal and the sour tang of burned flesh. He wasn't supposed to be here when it ended. He was supposed to be on the Vigilant, Earth's last surviving carrier in this sector. But orders had been scrambled, and now he was trapped in Haruan, the jewel city of the Varel Dominion, the same aliens who had just won the war. He wasn't alone. Something moved in the rubble ahead. A slender figure emerged, draped in a torn ceremonial robe, tall, with smooth silver-gray skin and black eyes like deep water. She held one hand to her side where blood, if you could call that glowing blue liquid blood, leaked between her fingers. Her voice was low but urgent. "You are human?" She asked in perfect, if stilted, English. Elias kept his rifle up. "Depends who's asking. I am Lyra," she said. "My father was the Archseer of Haruan. He is gone, and so will I be if they find me." Elias glanced at the horizon. Varel soldiers patrolled in the distance, their armor gleaming, their banners snapping like final verdicts. If the war was over, this was the part where the victors made examples of the survivors. He didn't know why he didn't walk away. Maybe it was the way her voice shook. Maybe it was because she was clearly one of the enemy, but terrified in a way he recognized from too many battlefields. "You're bleeding out," he said. "I know." He slung his rifle and pulled her behind. The fallen statue. "Sit tight. I can fix this." She gave him a puzzled look. "You are a healer?" "Engineer," he corrected, rummaging through his pack. "But flesh and tech aren't so different. You've just got to know where the leaks are." As he worked, she watched him with those unblinking black eyes. "They said your kind would be gone after today," she whispered. That Earth's fleets had fallen, that there would be no more humans. Elias snorted. "Yeah, they've been saying that for years." She tilted her head. "It is true, then? You have lost?" Elias paused, meeting her gaze. "Not yet." Before she could answer, a deep vibration rolled through the ground. At first he thought it was artillery, but the sound was too low, too constant. Then he realized it was coming from above. The sky darkened. Both of them looked up. A fleet was descending through the thin gray clouds, not VRL ships. These hulls were black as obsidian, bristling with spires, their engines glowing like white-hot suns. Lyra's voice trembled. "Those are not ours." Elias felt his chest tighten. He knew those silhouettes. Every spacer in Earth's Navy knew them. But they weren't supposed to be here. Not in this system. Not after the ceasefire. They were dreadnoughts. Earth's most feared warships. And there were dozens. Guess nobody told Command the war was over. Elias said. A beam of white fire split the sky, striking the Varel command tower. The city erupted into chaos. And Elias realized, if the dreadnoughts were here, the real war hadn't even started. Part 1 cliffhanger. Earth's most powerful ships arrive after the enemy has already declared victory. Asterisk the dreadnoughts. Shadow, the first blast from the dreadnought Indomitable, didn't just destroy the Varel command tower. It erased it. One moment the spire was there, glinting in the pale sun, and the next it was gone, replaced by a column of vapor and molten glass that climbed into the clouds. The shockwave hit a heartbeat later, rattling Elias's teeth and sending dust billowing. Through the streets, Lyra clutched the robe tighter around her wound. Why are they here? The Dominion has already claimed victory. This is madness. Elias didn't answer right away. His gaze was locked on the sky, where more dreadnoughts punched through the atmosphere, their massive frames blotting out the light. Each was a city of guns, shields, and hangar bays, the kind of ships the Varel had nightmares about. You don't bring those in for peacekeeping, Elias muttered. Something's wrong. The Varel patrols broke formation, shouting into comms. Artillery positions turned skyward, but Elias knew it was pointless. The dreadnoughts were too far beyond anything the Dominion could swat from the air. Then, the Indomitable transmitted. A single voice boomed across every channel, translated into dozens of tongues. This is Admiral Nix Kalen of the Terran United Navy. To all human forces, hold your positions. To the Varel Dominion, you have violated the surrender accords. You will stand down immediately or face eradication. Lyra's eyes widened. Violation? But the Dominion. Yeah, Elias said grimly. I'm starting to think. This victory of yours isn't exactly clean. In the distance, he spotted Varel soldiers dragging civilians into lines. Executions? Shields? He couldn't tell. His gut told him either answer was bad. He glanced at Lyra. We need to move. Now. She hesitated. If they see me with you, they'll kill me. Elias shrugged. If they see you without me, they'll kill you faster. They slipped through the back alleys as chaos rippled through the city. Above them, dropships poured from. The dreadnoughts, black needles slicing the clouds. Their engines screamed as they deployed atmospheric stabilizers. And Elias noticed something odd. They weren't heading straight for the military zones. They were scattering across the city, hitting specific coordinates, the kind of targets you only hit if you already had eyes on the ground dot. So Earth's been here the whole time? Elias realized. Watching, a sudden metallic shriek tore through the alley ahead. A Varel walker dropping from a transport skimmer. It stood 3 meters tall, bristling with weapons, its pilot's slit visor glowing amber. It pivoted toward them. Target acquired. It hissed through a speaker. Elias shoved Lyra behind a rusted bulkhead, just as the walker's railgun roared. Sparks flew. He dove sideways, his rifle spitting bursts of blue plasma, barely scratching the walker's shields. Your weapon is too small. Lyra shouted over the din. Yeah, so's my patience. He ducked as another rail round ripped through the wall, showering them with debris. Then Elias's gaze fell on a toppled grav bike lying in the rubble, its power core still glowing faintly. He grinned. Cover your ears. He scrambled to the bike, yanked the core from its housing, and armed its failsafe. The device began to whine, a rising keening sound that made his teeth ache. Elias hurled it toward the walker and dove for cover. A heartbeat later, the street exploded in a flash of white light, collapsing nearby walls and flipping the walker. Onto its side, the pilot crawled from the wreckage, stunned. Elias didn't hesitate. One shot, center mass, and it was over. He turned back to Lyra, breathing hard. See? Engineering. Before she could reply, a shadow swept over them. Elias looked up and froze. One of the dreadnoughts was descending low, far lower than any capital ship should risk in a contested city. Its belly bristled with hatches, and something massive was emerging. Lyra's voice trembled. What is that? Elias squinted. Drop forge platform. I've only ever seen one once. The platform detached, slamming into the ground 3 blocks away. From it, dozens of human mechs strode into the streets, each towering over tanks, each armed like a walking fortress. But there was no cheer in Elias's chest. If they were deploying those, then the Admiralty wasn't here to negotiate. This was going to be a purge. Asterisk. A message buried in the ruins. The mechs moved with frightening precision. Each step cracked pavement. Each turn of their cannons left the air trembling. The Virel patrols didn't even try to fight. They scattered like insects under a falling boot. Civilians screamed and fled in every direction, but the mechs didn't fire on them, not yet. Elias and Lyra ducked into the half-collapsed remains of what had once been a museum. The air inside was thick with dust and the faint smell of burned composites. Elias found a broken window with a clear line of sight toward the dreadnought above. Lyra was trembling. These machines, they are for extermination. Not unless someone tells them to be, Elias said, though his voice lacked conviction. She leaned against a wall, clutching her side. You said your people were losing this war. Why send ships like that now? Elias kept scanning the streets. That's the part I'm trying to figure out. Before he could say more, his helmet's emergency comms crackled to life for the first time in days. Rourke, this is Kalen. Elias froze. Kalen was the admiral who'd just given the planetary. Broadcast. She wasn't the kind of person who called grunts in the field, ever. He tapped his earpiece. Copy. I'm in Harawan's West Quarter. What's going on? Thought the war was over. A pause. Then, negative. The Dominion signed false accords. They've been hiding a Class 7 artifact here, something that could give them a strategic edge across the entire sector. Your orders are to secure it before their intelligence branch extracts it. Elias glanced at Lyra. Artifact? Where? Coordinates uploaded. 2 clicks east of your position. A museum vault. His stomach sank. He was in the museum. And, if Kellen's intel was right, he turned to Lyra. What's in this place's vault? Her expression shifted. Not fear, but something colder. You cannot take it. Elias narrowed his eyes. So it's real. She took a step back. Her voice firm despite the pain. It is older than both our species. My father swore an oath to guard it. If your people take it, they will not stop at the Dominion. Elias checked his rifle. Lady, I'm not here to play moral philosopher. If that thing's dangerous, it needs to be somewhere the Virel can't. A deep metallic clang echoed from below. Heavy footsteps. Elias cursed under his breath. They're here. He pulled Lyra behind a marble column as the far door burst inward. 4 Virel soldiers swept in, their armor black with elite unit insignia. They weren't looters or regular patrol. These were the Dominion's Black Ops, Obsidian Guard, and they moved like they knew exactly what they were looking for. The leader barked an order, and 2 soldiers moved toward the central stairwell. The path to the underground vault, Elias's instincts screamed at him. If they got there first, it wouldn't matter how many mechs Earth dropped. The artifact would be gone. He leaned toward Lyra. You want to save your people? Then help me get to it first. She hesitated, then nodded, but her eyes told. Him she still didn't trust what he'd do with it. Elias waited until the guards passed their hiding spot, then moved fast. 2 quick shots, 1 soldier down, another reeling. The others spun, shouting in their own tongue. Lyra darted forward with a motion too quick for her wound to allow, grabbing a fallen guard's blade and slicing the air in an arc that dropped. The second, the leader roared and swung his rifle toward her, but Elias put a bolt through the man's visor before he could fire. The room fell silent except for their breathing. Lyra stared at him, blade dripping faint blue. I am no soldier, she said quietly. Elias reloaded. You fight better than half the ones I've served with. They hurried down the cracked stairwell, the air growing cooler. Faint blue light shimmered from ahead. The vault doors were massive, etched with alien script, their surface humming faintly with power, Lyra pressed her hand to a panel, and the doors parted with a hiss. Inside was a single pedestal. On it rested something that looked wrong. Not alien, not human. Other. A sphere of black stone that seemed to eat the light around it. Thin threads of silver webbed across its surface, shifting like veins under skin. Elias felt a chill. "That's it," Lyra nodded. "It is called the Core of Ages. It does not belong in war." Before he could respond, a new voice spoke from behind them. Cold, familiar. "I agree," it said. "Which is why I will be taking it." Elias spun around and froze. Standing in the doorway was Commander Haffel, once Elias's commanding officer in the Terran Navy. A man who was supposed to be dead, and he was wearing Varel armor. Asterisk. The traitor's bargain. Elias's hands tightened on his rifle. Commander Haffel hadn't aged a day since Elias had last seen him aboard the Vigilant. Same scar down his cheek, same calm, calculating eyes. But now he wore the blackened alloy armor of the Varel Obsidian Guard, its jagged plates, catching the faint blue light of the vault. "Haffel," Elias said flatly. "You're supposed to be a corpse." The older man smiled without warmth. "And yet, here I am, breathing, thinking, making better choices than the Admiralty ever did." "You're wearing their colors." "I'm wearing survival," Haffel corrected. "Earth's high command has been bleeding our fleets dry for years. The Dominion offered me something better: peace, prosperity, and now the core." Lyra stepped between them, blade still in hand. "This relic belongs to no empire." Haffel regarded her with a faint smirk. "And yet every empire wants it, including yours." "Including his." Elias's mind was spinning. If Haffel was working with the Dominion, that meant the false accords Kalen had mentioned might have been a smokescreen, and the dreadnoughts' arrival wasn't just about revenge. They were here to take the core at any cost. He kept his rifle steady. "Walk away, Haffel. You know what's coming from orbit. You won't make it out alive." The former commander's smirk deepened. "Oh, I think I will. You see, Admiral Kalen isn't here to save anyone. She's here to wipe Haruin off the star charts and make it look like the Dominion forced her hand. Once the core is in her possession, she'll glass the planet. Clean, efficient, and Earth gets to look like the righteous victor." Elias felt a slow burn of anger in his chest. "And you're just fine with handing that thing over to a war criminal?" Haffel's expression hardened. "Better the devil who wins than the one who dies screaming in an airless void." Then he moved. For a man his age, Haffel was fast. Faster than Elias remembered. He ducked sideways, drawing a sleek Virel sidearm, and fired. A plasma bolt scorched the wall inches from Elias's head. Elias dove behind the pedestal, returning fire. Lyra darted low, trying to cut off Haffel's angle, but he kicked the blade from her hand with brutal precision. The core pulse dotted wasn't just light. Elias felt it, like a pressure behind his eyes. The air seemed to hum with a deep, slow rhythm, almost like a heartbeat. Haffel noticed too. "It's waking," he said, almost reverently. "Do you feel it, Rourke? This is why both sides fear it. It changes whoever touches it." Elias saw the man's gloved hand reach for the sphere. "No!" Lyra shouted. Too late. The instant Haffel's palm touched the core, his eyes widened. Then his body went rigid. The silver veins along the sphere's surface flared bright, snaking up his arm, across his chest. His armor's servos screamed as if resisting some invisible force. Haffel's voice turned rough, layered with something that wasn't entirely human. "It speaks. It knows." Elias didn't wait to hear more. He launched forward, slamming into Haffel with full force. The two men crashed to the floor, the core rolling free across the vault. It stopped at Lyra's feet. She stared down at it, her breath coming fast. If Kalen gets this, if the Dominion gets this, all worlds burn. Above them, a deep rumble shook the building. Not just distant artillery, this was heavier, slower. Elias recognized it instantly. Orbital kinetic strikes warming up. Haffels. Lips twisted into something between a grin and a snarl. Too late, Rourke. The purge has already begun. Dust rained from the ceiling. The sound grew louder. The dreadnoughts were aligning for a mass strike, and Elias realized, if they didn't get the core and themselves out of this vault now, Harum wouldn't exist in 10 minutes. Asterisk. Fire from the sky. The first orbital strike hit 3 districts away. It didn't sound like an explosion. It sounded like the air itself had been torn in half. A white-hot pillar of compressed kinetic force slammed into Haruan's skyline, vaporizing towers in an instant. The shockwave roared through the museum, toppling shelves and splintering ancient artifacts. Elias grabbed Lyra's arm. "Move!" She clutched the core against her chest, the silver veins along its surface shifting like they were alive. "If I drop it, you won't. Go." Haffel lunged for her, but Elias stepped into his path, driving a boot into the man's midsection. The impact was solid, but Haffel didn't flinch the way a normal man would. His eyes gleamed with a faint silver light. "Rourke," he rasped, voice layered with that same alien undertone. "You can't stop what's coming. The core wants war." "Then it picked the wrong mechanic," Elias growled. Another orbital strike landed, closer this time. The ceiling cracked, daylight spilling through in jagged shafts. Dust swirled in the glow, turning the vault into a snow globe of chaos. Elias shoved Haffel into a column and ran after Lyra. They sprinted up the stairwell, each step shaking as the planet's crust took another beating from above. When they burst into the open streets, the scene was pure apocalypse. The dreadnoughts loomed overhead, their shadow blotting out the sun. Rail slugs screamed through the air, smashing entire city blocks into molten glass. Virel soldiers fired wildly at the descending mechs, but their rounds bounced off armor thicker than battleship hulls. Civilians ran in every direction, their screams swallowed by the roar of bombardment. A Terran mech pivoted toward them, 20 meters of armored death. Its targeting sensors locked on Lyra instantly, reading the core's energy signature. "Oh, hell," Elias muttered. The mech's chest-mounted cannon began to charge. Elias yanked Lyra into a side alley, just as a lance of white plasma cut through where they'd been standing, melting pavement into bubbling slag. "We won't make it." Lyra shouted over the din. Double quotes, "Yes, we will, but we have to lose the signal." Elias scanned the alley until his eyes landed on a half-collapsed mag tram station. Its shielding canopy still glowed faintly. Inside, they ducked into the ruins as the mech's footsteps thundered past. Inside the station, Elias yanked open an old maintenance locker and pulled out a field scrambler, a boxy device meant to disrupt ticketing beacons. Not military grade, but it might mask the core's signature for a few minutes. He slapped it on the core. The silver veins dimmed slightly. Lyra frowned. "Will this stop them?" "No," Elias said honestly, "but it might confuse them long. Enough for us to—" A familiar voice cut through the noise, coming from the far side of the station. "You're wasting time, Rourke." Elias turned. Haffel was there, somehow ahead of them, his armor scorched but intact. His right arm twitched like a marionette's string was pulling it. The core's glow reflected in his eyes, making them seem less human by the second. "You can't outrun a dreadnought purge," Haffel continued, stepping closer. "Give me the core, and I can get us all off-world before the planet's gone." Lyra's grip tightened on the sphere. "I will die before giving it to you." "That," Haffel said softly, "can be arranged." He moved faster than Elias, could track, crossing the space between them in a blur. His armored gauntlet clamped around Lyra's wrist, forcing the core from her hands. She screamed as the silver veins pulsed brightly, crawling onto her skin. Elias charged, tackling Haffel into a support beam. The impact sent both men sprawling. The core clattered across the floor. Outside, another orbital strike landed right next door. The blast blew out the station wall, hurling Elias into a pile of twisted metal. His ears rang. He tried to push himself up, but his vision swam. Through the haze, he saw Lyra crawling toward the core, and then a mech's massive hand reached. Through the collapsed wall, fingers closing around both her and the sphere in one crushing grip. The mech's external speakers boomed. Package secured. Begin extraction to Indomitable. The ground shook as the mech's boosters ignited, lifting it and Lyra into the air. Asterisk boarding the Indomitable, the mech's thrusters lit the sky like twin suns, carrying Lyra and the core toward the massive black shadow of the Indomitable above. Elias staggered to his feet, ears still ringing, lungs burning from the smoke. If that mech made it to the dreadnought's hangar, Lyra was gone, the core gone, and her ruins purge would be complete. A battered Varel skimmer bike lay on. Its side nearby, one stabilizer sparking, the other twisted like scrap paper. It wasn't space-worthy. It wasn't even street-worthy. But Elias had fixed worse. He ran to it, ripping open the engine casing. The plasma cell was intact, but bleeding coolant. The steering yoke was jammed. He jammed his rifle between the struts, using it as a makeshift lever to snap the frame back into shape. The yoke freed with a shriek of metal. He didn't have time to test it. He didn't have time for anything. The mech was already halfway to the dreadnought. Elias gunned the engine. The skimmer lurched forward, then roared to life, streaking down the ruined street. He wove between craters and collapsing buildings. Eyes locked on the mech's thruster glow above. Closer, closer. He hit the city's last, intact mag rail line, and gunned the throttle. The skimmer climbed the sloping track, boosters screaming, until he was airborne, chasing the mech straight into the sky. The air thinned, his chest tightened. The skimmer's altitude alarms wailed. Then the mech loomed ahead, a walking fortress. Dangling from its boosters, Elias angled the skimmer and slammed into the mech's leg with a bone-jarring clang. He leapt, grabbing hold of an armor ridge. The skimmer tumbled away, vanishing in the clouds below. The mech's servos whined as it shifted mid-flight, trying to shake him loose. Elias climbed, hand over hand, using maintenance gaps in the plating. A hydraulic piston hissed inches from his face, nearly crushing his head. Finally, he reached the mech's cargo hold, a reinforced cage where Lyra and the core were pinned. Between magnetic clamps, her eyes widened in shock. Elias, hold that thought, he grunted, yanking a maintenance panel open. Inside, a tangle of coolant lines hissed under pressure. He tore one free, spraying freezing vapor across. The mag locks holding her in place. The clamps sparked, weakened, and with a hard kick, they shattered. An alarm shrieked. The mech's AI blared. Security breach detected. Adjusting flight path. The mech tilted violently, forcing Elias and Lyra to grab whatever they could. The core rolled toward the edge. Elias snagged it with one hand just before it tumbled. Into the clouds. Lyra shouted over the roar. We'll fall. Not if we get inside that dreadnought, Elias said, pointing to the Indomitable's yawning hangar ahead. The mech banked hard, aligning for landing. Elias timed his move. Then, just as the mech's landing struts hit the hangar deck, he and Lyra leapt clear, hitting the floor and rolling behind a stack of cargo crates. The hangar was a cathedral of steel, hundreds of Terran Marines moving. With machine precision, loaders carting ammunition to heavy cannons, fighter craft being armed for another strike run. No one had noticed them yet. Elias glanced at the core, then at Lyra. We can't just walk out of here." She gave him a grim smile. "Then we don't walk." She led him toward a row of maintenance bays along the hangar wall, a half disassembled boarding pod sat in one cradle, its hatch open, tools scattered nearby. Elias's mind was already racing. If we can wire this pod into one of their assault tubes, we can ride it out instead of in, he said. Might even get us past the blockade. Will it work? She asked. He smirked faintly. No, but it'll be spectacular. They scrambled inside the pod. Elias tore open the control panel, hands flying over the jury-rigged wiring. He bypassed the navigation lockouts, rerouted the launch signal, and set the targeting to anywhere but here. The pod systems hummed to life, just as a sharp voice rang out behind them. "Step away from the controls, Rourke." Elias turned. Admiral. Nix Kalin herself stood in the bay entrance, flanked by 2 armored Marines. Her eyes flicked from Elias to Lyra to the core in his hands. "You've caused me a great deal of trouble," she said coldly. LS held the core tighter. "You're about to have more." The last choice Admiral Nix Kalin stepped fully into the maintenance bay, her boots clicking on the deck like a metronome for executions. Up close, she was all sharp lines, uniform immaculate, hair pulled tight, eyes like polished steel. They kind of gaze that could order a planet's destruction without flinching. "Rourke," she said evenly, "you're going to hand me the core, and you're going to do it now." Elias didn't move. "You're burning a city full of civilians to get your hands on this thing." "The Dominion signed their death warrant when they lied to us," Kalin replied. "They forced our hand. With the core, Earth can end every war before it starts." "By starting this one," Elias shot back. Her gaze flicked to Lyra, then to the core in Elias's hands. "You think you're saving her people? You're not. If the Dominion keeps the core, they'll use it to tear through our colonies. You've seen what they can do." Elias's grip on the sphere tightened. The silver veins along its surface seemed to pulse faster, almost in sync with his heartbeat. A whisper brushed the edge of his thoughts. Not words, but something like intent, power, choice, change. Lyra stepped forward, her voice steady despite the tension. "The core is not a weapon. It becomes what its holder is. In the wrong hands, it destroys. In the right hands, in my hands," Kalin cut in, "it keeps Earth alive." Elias glanced at Haffel's earlier transformation, at the way the core had almost eaten him from the inside. Right hands? He wasn't sure those existed. Kalin raised her sidearm. Last chance. Elias's mind raced. They were inside a boarding pod. The pod's guidance system was bypassed. The core was. Awake. He looked at Lyra. She met his eyes and gave the slightest nod. Elias turned the core in his hands, pressing it against the pod's primary control nexus. The silver veins flared, crawling over the console, fusing with the circuitry. The pod systems roared to life without his input, thrusters spooling in a rising scream. "What are you doing?" Kalin snapped, stepping forward. Elias grinned, giving it to no one. The pod's hatch slammed shut between them. The launch clamps blew free, and the pod shot down the assault tube like a bullet from a cannon. Kalin's furious voice crackled over the external cones. "Rourke, you'll never make it out alive." Elias strapped in beside Lyra as the pod hit atmosphere, heat shields glowing red. The core's light filled the cabin, casting strange shadows on their faces. Below them, Haruan's burning surface receded. Above them, the black gulf of space opened, and beyond that, stars. The core pulsed again. This time, Elias heard it, in a voice both alien and familiar. "Destination?" He met Lyra's gaze. "Anywhere they can't follow." The stars blurred. In a blink, the pod vanished from Terran sensors. gone into some fold of space neither Earth nor the Dominion could track. Epilogue weeks later. The war ended for real. Aroan's ruins cooled, the dreadnoughts withdrew, and the Dominion licked its wounds. Neither side ever admitted they'd lost the core. Somewhere far from any charted system, Elias and Lyra stood on the rocky shore of an uninhabited world. The core rested between them, silent but still faintly alive. What now? She asked. Elias looked out at the alien ocean, its waves breaking in colors no human eye had seen before. Now, he said, we keep it safe. From them, from everyone, even from us. For the first time since the war began, Lyra smiled. Above them, the night sky burned with unfamiliar constellations. And somewhere, far behind those stars, Earth's dreadnoughts searched for something they'd never find. Asterisk.